And with the eyes closed, just focusing on your breath. Practicing awareness of the aliveness that moves through you, that is expressed by you, and that is engaged in, dreamt of, decided upon by you. And as you sit here breathing and being, allow yourself as best you can to come into a very pure experience of that aliveness, one that is not riddled with fear, expectation, attachment, doubt. Instead, experience each breath with innocence. Without assuming. And with allowance. And draw the hands together in front of the heart. We'll lift our voices in one Om, followed by the invocation mantras. Taking a breath in. Om Shri Guru Bhyo Namaha Hari Om Ganana Antva Ganapati Gum Hava Mahe Kavin Kavinam Upama Shravastamam Jestarajam Brahmanan Brahmanaspata Anashrinvanuti Bisidha Sadhanam Mahaganapataye Namaha Prano Devi Saraswati Vaje Birvajini Vati Dhinama Vitriyavatu Ano Divo Brahataf Parvata Da Saraswati Ajata Gantu Yagnyam Havan Devi Jujushana Kritachi Shabmam No Vachamushati Shrinotu Vagdevye Namaha. Gently releasing the hands down and fluttering the eyes open. So today I thought we would talk about the spirituality of relationship. And talk about at least some of the components of relationship and how we tend to navigate relationships and how we could navigate relationships according to a more yogic perspective. And so when we talk about relationships, the Katha Upanishad comes to mind a lot of the time. The Katha Upanishad deals with many, many different issues and questions and concerns and spirituality. But perhaps two, or maybe three, of the primary lessons dealt with in the Katha Upanishad are, number one, our relationship to ourself, as illustrated by the little boy, Nachiketa, when he has such a deep faith in his own self and in his own ability to understand what is important and what is not important. That here he is, potentially a 9-year-old little boy, and he stands up to the Lord of Death when the Lord of Death tries to entice him with gifts and kingdoms and the promise of herds of cows and beautiful wives and all these things. And the boy says, no, I've seen you. How do those things have any meaning in comparison? You can keep your gifts. I need an answer to my question. A 9-year-old little boy, so determined within his own self, so dedicated to knowing the truth. So the first type of relationship that the Katha Upanishad deals with is the relationship to the self. Now I'll explain more about the story as we go along. The second type of relationship that it deals with is our relationship to others. Here this little 9-year-old boy is watching his father conduct a ritual. And it's a ritual wherein at the end of the ritual, one is to give all of their belongings away. And he watches his father giving away cows that can no longer give milk. Cows that, in the description, in the Katha Upanishad, cows that are one step from death. And the little boy seeing this and having a deep faith in the purpose of these rituals and what he has learned in this life and his own spiritual insight, because we all know the truth before it's even taught to us. He says to his father, "Who would you give me to?" Now, there's a couple of different ideas about what he's actually asking and why. The most common is that he's a child who sees his father doing something inappropriate, unethical perhaps. And so he's nagging him and he's calling him on it. He's saying, "Who would you give me to? You're going to give the Brahmins these cows that are not good for anything? Who would you give me to?" And he irritates his father. The other take on that is that here is this child who has a unique understanding of the purpose of rituals and the calling of Dharma. And he sees his father making a mistake. And he goes forward to help him correct it. And says, "You're giving these cows, give me too. Who would you give me to? Make your offering more well-rounded. Even though I'm just a child. And probably not much more of use than these cows. Still, it'll be something else. So give." Which one of these interpretations is correct? I'm not to say. But they both serve a purpose. Because they both illustrate how we can conduct our relationship with others. The first is still to be defined in the story, but basically to see clearly what's happening and to not question it. To see clearly what's happening. To not deny it. He didn't deny it. He didn't say, "Oh no, my dad's the greatest dad in the world. He wouldn't go light on the cows. There's no way." He didn't say that. He didn't say, "Don't anybody else accuse my dad of anything. Don't you dare." He didn't say that. He called him. He said, if you look at the first interpretation of it, he called him. He said, "This is what you're doing. Period. Who would you send me to?" And the father replies to him, "I send you to death, to Lord Yama, the god of death." And the boy goes. He says, "Okay." And off he goes to the Lord of death. He doesn't question his father's motives or his intentions. He doesn't say, "How can you get so mad at me when you're the one making the mistake?" He doesn't engage his father at that point. He just goes. He does exactly. He goes to the Lord of Death. So the first thing that it tells us about our relationship with others is work to see clearly. And once you have seen clearly, understand what you have seen. And don't try to fix the person. Instead, just take appropriate action. your appropriate action may be to walk away without further instigation. It may be to make an offering of support, of service. Hence the second interpretation of their conversation. But whatever it is that you decide to do, decide it knowing what it is that you're seeing and not just jumping in blindly because this is your friend or your family member or your partner. Don't go in with excuses. Don't go in with expectations. Don't go in with critical judgments that come from the ego. Instead, conduct your relationships from a more pure place. A place of clarity, of seeing clearly. And don't be afraid to offer the very best of yourself. Even when someone is not offering the best of themselves. Don't be afraid to offer the best of yourself. Because it is your truth that you are living up to, not somebody else's. It's your purpose that you are fulfilling, not somebody else's. So don't be afraid in any situation to offer the very best of yourself. And don't forget that the very best of yourself is not what makes another person's ego happy. Matter of fact, it's probably usually the contrary. The very best of yourself is what abides in the truth that your heart knows to be. Right? So that's the second. The second thing is our relationship with others. And the third aspect of relationship that the Katha Upanishad teaches us is our relationship with divinity. It informs some aspect of that. Because here is this little innocent child, this 9-year-old child, who's actually possibly a little wiser than the adult here, right? So there's a wisdom in innocence. There's a clarity there. And he goes up to the Lord of Death. His father says, I give you to the Lord of Death. You irritated me, that's who you go to. The father didn't say that because he was actually sending him. He said it because he was mad. And the boy recognized he was angry. But the boy went anyway because it was the appropriate thing for him to do. So he goes to Lord Yama's home. And now here's the thing. He doesn't ask for directions. Nowhere in the Katha Upanishad does it say that his father told him how to get there. You know, he knew how to get there. He knew exactly where the Lord of Death lived. And he went to his home. He knew exactly where he was intuitively, instinctually, innately. He knew where the Lord of Death was, where he lived. Similarly, we innately know where God is. We innately know where the goddess is. We innately know these things. We intuitively know them. But what do? We ask every single person we meet for directions. We say, do you know where God is? Can you point me in that direction? Do you? We ask everybody to confirm or deny or debate what it is that we already know, that we innately know. So not only does it define for us the necessity of faith in our own deep internal knowing, but it also tells us, don't be distracted along the way. Don't be distracted. There's several different types of seeker. There's the one who seeks out God for the glamour of it. This is the individual who's constantly asking for things. Let me win the lottery. Let me have a car. Let me have a house. Let me have the perfect partner, the wonderful family. Let me have the good things. I'll pray. I'll go to church or temple if you just let me have the good things. That's the one who wants the glamour of God. And then there's the one who has curiosity. The one who's not necessarily interested in adhering themselves, but they're curious. They're like, you ever meet somebody and you're like, who are you? I just want to know who you are. Like, tell me about yourself. Because you're some kind of crazy, And so the curious seeker is that. The curious seeker is the one who's saying, I just want to know. Like, I just want to know, so just tell me. And distract me with the stories of your glory. And then the third seeker is the individual who genuinely wants to learn and who is not as interested in the distractions. That individual says, teach me. Teach me what I need to know. Teach me what I don't need to know. But teach me so that I do know. And then the fourth seeker is the one who intuitively knows, who intuitively understands, and says, teach me what I need to know so that I forget less, and empower me to accept whatever comes my way, so that I don't become distracted from knowing you. As Nachiketa waited at Lord Yama's house for 3 days, because Lord Yama wasn't expecting him. This child wasn't supposed to be coming to him yet. So he sat there for 3 days and he waited. And when Lord Yama got back to his house, he felt very sad. He said, this is not appropriate. You shouldn't have had to have waited for me. So I'm going to give you 3 boons, three gifts. Now there's another little innuendo there. Lord Yama is a pretty powerful aspect of divinity. It's the god of death. 9-year-old child. Lord Yama apologizes to him. Says the respect within our relationship is not necessitated on age. It's on relationship. That I treat you appropriately, you treat me appropriately. You came here because you were told to, and I was not here to meet you. Now let me correct myself. You see? Isn't it great? Like you can just go down the rabbit hole with these things. You really, really can. It's just like so amazing. So our conduct in relationship should also not be necessitated on age. Just because a child is 9 and an adult is an adult doesn't mean the child owes them respect. The adult owes the child respect also. It's a two-way street always. But what's more important than it being a two-way street is the conduct of the self. That I look at the 9-year-old child or the 12-year-old or the 24-year-old or the 60-year-old or whatever age, and that I present my very best self. Not my best self in a way that's going to make their ego happy, but my very best self that is adhering to the truth of the ethic that I wish to live by. So Lord Yama says to him, let me give you 3 gifts, 3 boons. What do you want? The first thing that the boy asks for, he says, without even hesitation, let my father's anger at me be dissolved, such that the next time he sees me, he remembers how much he loves me, and he remembers the beauty of our relationship, the sanctity of our relationship. Yeah, that's a really bright 9-year-old, truly. Because what he says to the Lord of Death is, my first boon is that you don't keep me. You send me back to my father. But not only do you not keep me, you send me back to my father, but also you make sure that my father is in such a condition in his life that he's no longer suffering from anger. He's no longer suffering from anger. So in this regard, what the Katha Upanishad teaches us about relationship is that we should not get caught up in another individual's tumultuous behaviors We should simply ask for their peace. It's never beyond us to ask that another being have peace in their life, alleviation of suffering. That's the whole premise of our aliveness. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. May all beings everywhere be happy, free from suffering. And then we extrapolate on that and we say, and may my words, my thoughts, and my actions have something to do with that. Well, if you want your words, thoughts, and actions to have something to do with that, then you have to literally intend for their peace, intend for their happiness, intend for their healing. This part of the Katha Upanishad teaches us something else a little interesting also. It teaches us that Nachiketa is not caught up in his father's anger. He's not concerned with it. He's not saying, why is he mad at me? Why did he send me here? Explain to me why he's the way he is. How many times have you asked that about somebody? Explain to me, why are they the way they are? No. Because Nachiketa, even at the young age of 9-ish years old, has a deep abiding faith in the truth not only of himself, but the truth of his father. Number one. And number two, he somehow recognizes or understands that it's useless to invest in another person's unethical behavior. It's a waste of time and energy to invest in another human being's unethical behavior. So he's not going to invest in his father's anger. He's not going to invest in that. Instead, he's going to ask that his father's anger be alleviated. May his anger be alleviated. And until it is, he'll sit with the Lord of Death and have a really great conversation and learn quite a few things. So when we're looking at those tendencies, we get caught up in the tendencies. We get caught up in the anger, in the insecurity, in all of these things within relationships that are very tumultuous. They're like waves on the ocean, right? Because, the waves are not permanent. They're temporary. The body of the ocean itself is permanent. I mean, you go swimming in the ocean, right? How many of you have gone swimming in the ocean? Everybody. Have you gone swimming in the ocean? No, I was going to say, you better raise your hand because I know you spent a lot of time there. So you go swimming in the ocean. Do you get mad at the ocean when a wave comes along? No. Of course not. Why? Because you know that it's going to come and go. And that after the wave is done coming and going, that what's going to be left is the body of the ocean. And as a matter of fact, from time to time, those waves are actually kind of humorous, interesting, and fun, right? So hence, we've created an entire sport, out of how to maneuver those waves. So we go into the ocean, and we knowingly go in the ocean. We go in and we say, I know there's waves, and I know some of them are going to knock me down, but I'm going to go anyway. Because the reality is that the larger truth of the ocean is just so immensely beautiful. I just wish to be with that, to know that. And so we maneuver the waves. But in our relationships, which are just like that, we think the waves are the truth and the permanent part, and that there's nothing else. You're angry with me. Why are you always angry with me? Why are you always this? Why are you always that? And so we allow ourselves to be trapped in the waves, to be thrown about by them, to be knocked down over and over and over and over again, with little to no understanding that the wave is actually a temporary feature in the relationship. And that there is a greater experience to be had. Now, some would ask, how do we get to that greater experience within a relationship? You can't get there, as Nachiketa illustrates for us, by depending upon the unethical behavior of another person, or the forgetfulness of another person, or the doubt of another person. You can only get to that place of enjoyment within relationship by depending solely upon yourself. Solely upon yourself. And that depending solely upon yourself is going to inform you whether you should even stay in close proximity in that relationship, or whether you should have more space between you. How you can observe and witness, how you can have compassion, how you can see the truth, have clarity with the truth. And whatever decision is made in a relationship, allow it to more and more be made outside of the ego. Or at least acknowledging that the ego is very much at play in decisions that are made. Does that make sense? So our relationships are like the ocean. We can go swimming. We can learn how to maneuver the waves. We can enjoy even a greater amount of the relationship that we're in. And we can also come to see with clarity and to understand with clarity those relationships that are meant to be closer and those that are meant to be further away. So the first thing he asks for is for relief for his father, and for his father to return to remembering the love that he feels for his son. The second thing he asks for is knowledge of a particular fire ritual. And initially, the Lord of Death doesn't want to give this to him. You know, he's like, this takes lifetimes for people to perfect. And even the greatest of sages haven't perfected it yet, because there's just so much to remember. And here you are, a 9-year-old boy. How are you ever going to do this? Ask for something else. And the boy says, no. This is what guarantees me access to heaven. This is what guarantees me access to truth. This is what guarantees me access to knowledge of the self. Now, of those three things, he's not so interested in access to heaven, because he has a unique understanding for a child of his age of what temporary is. And in certain teachings in the Veda, in certain teachings, our access to heaven is temporary, because we have to come back. How long does it last then? For as long as the karma that you've acquired in this life is good for. The good karma, that is. You know, the karma that's the yes ticket. So all the good works that you've done in this life have a certain amount of investment, and that's how long you'll hang out in heaven before you come back again. And so he says to him, well, knowing how to do this ritual guarantees that I have access. Absolutely. But it also guarantees that I have a deeper relationship with truth, a stronger relationship with truth, and a deeper and stronger access to self-knowledge. And so right there he's saying, you know, yes, I know that I get access to heaven from this, but I also have these other things reinforced, which I know are of the utmost importance. To have a continuous faith in truth and a continuous faith in the self. The truth of the self. So the Lord of Death teaches him. And then he says, what's your third one? And he says, I want to know. Some people say that after this death, you know, after this life when we die, we go on. Some people say we don't go on. I want to know what happens. What happens after we die? And the Lord of Death tries to really talk him out of this one. He says, you know, this is not for anybody to know. This is the mystery of life. And Even those who have spent their entire life praying and studying and doing the rituals, and they still don't know. How can you expect to know? Ask for anything else. I'll give you cows, which at that point in time considered to be, very wealth-oriented, to receive good cows. I'll give you the most beautiful wives, kingdoms, gems, money beyond your imagination. Just ask for anything else. And the boy looks at him and he says, I have seen your face up close and personal. I know you exist. I cannot know and now go back to ignorance. I cannot know that you exist and now go back to pretending that I don't know. That's ridiculous. Once I have seen you, the only thing I want to know is what happens. Where do you take me to? That's the only thing that matters. So he goes on to say this to him a few times in different ways. And eventually the Lord of Death does tell him. He shares with him the truth of Brahman, the truth of the innermost self. So the relationship that we have, these three relationships, relationship with ourselves, relationship with others, and relationship with divinity. These three relationships are of the utmost importance because they are the crux of what drives us, what inspires us, what compels us, what calls us to either continue going deeper into that truth, deeper into surrender, deeper into, I don't want the cows or the wives or the horses or the kingdoms. That's not what matters. What matters is my relationship with you and the clarity that I have about what divinity means, what it is, and what part I play in that. Or we go for the cows. We go for the waves. We go for the distractions, the temporariness. And we lose ourselves. We forget. We begin to lose perspective, thinking that the cows are permanent, that the kingdom is permanent, that the waves are permanent, and that the rest of it is fantasy. How we conduct our relationship is going to determine which of those avenues we take. And the condition of our faith is what determines which avenue we take. If our faith is weak, if our faith is inconsistent, if our faith is not all in, then we go the one route of temporary. We go the route of distraction. We go the route of the waves and the cows and the kingdoms. But if our faith is well established, and if the choices we make and the questions we ask and the decisions that we abide by are all grounded in faith, all coming from faith, and not from the type of faith that is vindictive in nature, because that's not really faith, right? Like if he had said, well, my father was angry at me. I don't want him to be mad at me anymore for the sake of him not being mad at me. I want my ego to be bolstered by his apology. No. He said, I don't want my father to suffer the throes of anger. Let him be at peace. Let him remember love. Not because it makes the boy happy, but because it brings the father peace. So when our faith is in such a strong, strong place that we can behave along those lines in terms of that avenue, where all of our questions, all of our actions, all of our decisions, all of it is oriented toward continuing to remember, continuing to know deeper, then all of our relationships will be right. all of our relationships will be right. Now the ego hears that and automatically says, I don't think they'll all be right. They'll all be right from your side. That's what matters for you, is that they're right from your side. It doesn't matter for you if they're right from the other side, because you cannot invest in another human being's unethical or ethical behavior. You can only invest in your own. So when a relationship is right, it doesn't mean that both people are behaving. It means that you have clarity and are behaving in ways that are aligned with the yamas and the niyamas. Non-violence, non-stealing, non-grasping, economy of energy, etc., and so on. Yeah? And the other person's just doing what they're going to do. And maybe they're somewhere, along the trajectory near you, and so you can communicate, and maybe they're not. And they see your attempt to have clarity as a threat. Your attempt to have clarity as something to be angry about. Your attempt to deepen your own faith as an insult. Why would you invest in that? The Katha Upanishad, Nachiketa, the little 9-year-old boy, maybe even younger, who knows? He says, don't invest in the anger. You don't invest in that. It's a waste of your investment. Don't do that. Invest in the thing that matters. And the thing that matters is what? Self-knowledge, clarity, and the 3 relationships, which, number 1, relationship to the self, relationship to others, and relationship to divinity. The relationship to others is not dependent upon how they treat you. It's only how you treat them. That's all it can be. How you treat them. And you treating them is not a nicety. It's not a nicety. There's a gap, a universe wide, between niceties and ethics. Right? Niceties are not ethics. They're just not. Ethics are straightforward. I will not harm you. I will not lie to you. I will not steal from you. I will not waste your energy. Yeah? I will not attach. I will not treat you in an unclean manner. In other words, with malintent. I will not be impatient with you or discontent with you. I will be disciplined in my relationship with you. Have boundaries. I will visualize myself in you. And I will see God in you. Ethics, not niceties. Let me do a time check. Questions or comments right now? Yes?
You're watching my face right now because I canceled my birthday party today because of this exact thing, of being aligned with people I'm just not aligned with anymore. And I do struggle with knowing the difference between expectations and moral standards. I struggle with that, but you always choose the topic that's nail on the head. It's amazing right now. That's why I'm laughing and crying at the same time. Yeah, I do struggle with knowing the difference between expectations and moral standards. I don't know where they start and begin, and sometimes I feel like I'm being extra critical on people, but it's also a yum or yuck kind of feeling. And I get so much yuck out of the people that I surround myself with. Not here. I was so excited to come here, but everybody's not thrilled that I canceled it tonight, but I just...
Is today your birthday?
It's Wednesday, but we're going to be out of town.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. Thank you.
May you have the most joyful birthday that you could ever have.
Thank you. Yes, we'll be at the beach, and it's just me and my partner, and that's all I want.
You'll be playing in the ocean.
Yes, exactly. That's why I'm like over here, like crying and laughing at the same time. But I will say I do struggle still on what is, moral standards and me throwing unnecessary expectations onto people.
Yeah. Well, if we were going to use the Katha Upanishad as an example, we would say that the boy saw his father conducting himself in a way that was not necessarily ethical. And he asked his father, you're giving these cows, what good are they? Who would you give me to? And knowing very full well that he could have gotten any number of different answers, the answer that his father gave him was, eventually, I'll give you to death. And the boy went. The boy didn't argue, stomp his feet, ask his father to change his mind. The boy didn't say, but you're more wrong than I am. The boy didn't continue to criticize, if he even criticized to begin with, which is some people describe it as that he was criticized, he was calling him on his stuff, but that's not necessarily the kind of egoic criticism that goes on and on and on and on forever. He just said with clarity, I see what you're doing. Who would you give me to? So he left the father alone after that. And he did do what his father told him to do. He went and he talked to the Lord of Death. When we look at a relationship, using that kind of symbology as our guide, what we can say is, have more concern with what you are doing or are not doing in your own life. And if a person says to you, you're not listening to me enough in this relationship, then listen more. What's it going to hurt you? If a person says they need something and you know the need is genuine and you don't really have a reason to doubt, then support them if you can. But do so without the expectation of a thank you, without the expectation of a fix, that it's going to fix whatever is happening, without the expectation that they're suddenly going to be okay. Let go of those expectations, because those are expectations that cannot be guaranteed to you. You just behave from a place within the relationship that has integrity within your own self, and stop calling other people on their integrity. Because when you're calling them out on their integrity, you're not really helping them. But when you act with integrity, you are helping everybody. Let them be mad.
Yeah.
What was that? Let them drink wine? What was that movie? Let them eat cake. Let them.
It's more so than drink wine.
Yeah, I know. I got you. I figured. But so let them drink. Let them do what they're going to do. Let them do what they're going to do. You explaining yourself away is not going to make a difference. If you wanted to look at this, yes, of course, on the one part they want to celebrate you. You're their friend, but on the other part they want the party. So you have clarity about that, and you say you can go have the party. I'm just not going to be there.
Exactly.
I'm not denying you your ability to party. Go party. Go ahead. I'm just not going to be there. That's all. Have fun.
Yeah, that's totally. Enjoy it.
Yeah. 100%.
I'll be at the ashram.
Come have apple cider vinegar with us. chai tea.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's hard though, it is. This idea between, these attachments that we have and expectations. The expectations, which are attachments, and the ethics. It's really hard because we want to look out in the world, we want to say, these people are doing it wrong. They just need to change what they're doing and doing it the way that I do it. But do we always do it that way? Do we always abide by the ethics that we say we abide by? No. We have trouble ourselves doing that. So how can we point, I don't know who said it, but somebody said, when you point a finger at somebody, those 3 fingers, they're pointing back at you. So you got 3 times more reason to call yourself on your own stuff than you got 1 reason to point at somebody else. Call yourself on your own stuff. Right? And as long as you remain self-invested in that way, that's an okay way to be self-invested because you're improving yourself. I was browsing through some videos or something the other day, and I came across some person. I guess they were doing a spiritual talk, and they said, I'm trying to think of the words, something along the lines of, yeah, and I'm done. I'm done with all this personal improvement crap. I'm done correcting myself while the rest of the world burns. And I thought to myself, oh, I want to turn this off right now, but I also want to continue listening because the fire went, whoa, right up. All you have is self-improvement. That's the reality of it. All you have is your ability to improve and correct yourself. You don't have anything else. Period. There is nothing that is guaranteed to you in this entire world. No, there is nothing else. The only thing you have is your relationship to you, how you treat others, and your relationship to God. That's it. So, what do you mean you're done with that? What are you selling people? Oh, but that's so common. Because people look at self-empowerment as being empowered to say, I'm done with you. You're nothing to me. And it's whoa, that is not self-empowerment. That's violence. I am done with you. That's violence. I'm cultivating healthy boundaries within this relationship, and I am no longer going to make myself accessible to the violence of another individual. That is self-empowerment, because your ability to hold healthy boundaries is self-improvement. That is self-improvement. That is self-correction. But sitting there and saying, I am so done with you because it's all your fault, that is not self-improvement. That is not self-empowerment. It's just not. Now, I acknowledge from a psychological perspective, we have to go through stages within our relationships. It's unfortunate too, but we do. Sometimes it's unfortunate. Because one of the stages that we do move through is the stage of learning how to use our voice. And we oftentimes read the wrong book. It's not really the wrong book, but we read the worst possible book. We read the book that says when you use your voice, you use your voice to tell people your truth. Cool, right? Well, what if my truth is that you suck? There's nothing cool about that. There's nothing helpful about that. What if my truth is, that it's all your fault and I have no blame whatsoever? What if my truth is that I'm just going to blame everybody else? And I'm just going to walk through life and say, you're all the ones with the problem. It has nothing to do with me. That is definitely using my voice, but it's not using my voice in a way that cultivates clarity. that cultivates a genuine sense of self-knowledge, it's not an appropriate use of the voice, but it is a use of the voice that we go through. And I would suggest we go through it for some reason. We do, so that we can understand the harm that our voice can cause. And it takes us entirely too long to figure that out, usually. We usually have to say something that's really devastating to another person before we understand really how powerful our voice can be, how violent our voice can be. And then we try to apologize for it. But once you say something, you don't take it back. You can't. The energy's been put out there into the universe now, and it's running amok, you know? So all you can do is self-correct as best you can, so that you don't use your voice in that way, so that you move through that stage of egoic, perspectives on voice and empowerment. You go through that stage quickly as possible, or you cultivate faith while you're going through that, so that as you're going through that stage, you don't get lost in the ego. Instead, you continually ask yourself, how does the use of my voice in this moment bring me closer to God? How does it bring me closer to Goddess? How does it bring me closer to myself? How does it allow me to leave you alone? Does that make sense? Yeah? Okay. I got lost there for a moment. But I figured you knew what I was talking about. I hoped. So we have these different stages. And this one stage that we go through, and it's kind of a feel-good stage. Like it's a feeling of like, what's the word I'm looking for? Superiority. It's a feeling of not being so vulnerable, or at least being able to pretend you're not so vulnerable. It's a feel-good state that we go through when we first start learning about self-empowerment. And we mistakenly see that as the point. But artificial strength and a fake sense of courage and being forceful, not powerful. There's a great book called Power versus Force. Phenomenal book. It's a heady read, but I suggest everybody read it because it's just so good. And it talks about the difference between being forceful and being powerful, and that most of us get lost in the use of our own voice and the use of our own energy for the purposes of forcing this life, forcing others, forcing ourselves. When that's not a good investment, that's not self-empowerment. Embracing your power, which has everything to do with radical self-responsibility and being able to look out and see with clarity what there is to be seen. But then understanding that your self-knowledge is not founded on your hyper investment in the outside world by way of egoic investment. That your self-empowerment, self-knowledge is only grounded and founded in the depth in which you're willing to travel into yourself. Did I say that properly? Okay, good. Other questions or reflections? This is why being on your own is so important. Did you want to say something?
I mean, yeah. What everything you're saying is like what's been going on for me too, like with my family, people at work, because they don't understand what me doing yoga and all that. They don't get it. They don't. They're total opposites of that type of lifestyle. So why?
Yeah.
And it's just let me be. I'm doing the best I can, and not trying to react or have expectations of others and stuff. But
It is definitely difficult because there's a part of our psychology that wants to have Sangha, wants to have like-minded community. And there's also a part of our psychology that wants people to say, you're doing so well. Well, I'll tell you, you are doing so well. But not everybody is going to be able to say that to you, because if they say that you're doing so well and you're doing something other than what they're doing, then in their psyche it must mean what? They're not doing so well. And nobody wants to admit that about themselves. So when you see them and you say, I'm just doing the best that I can, also understand that they're just doing the best that they can in that moment too, as far as what they see themselves doing. Yeah, and that's where the empathy is built, is when we recognize that we're really all doing the best we can with the tools we believe we have. Believe we have. Correct. Yeah. So the tools that we believe we have, the tools they believe they have are different tools than the ones that you see. You know? And all any person is really trying to do is to be okay in this life, is to be some kind of happy, is to fulfill something in this life, some kind of dream or some kind of responsibility. Everybody's so different. Yeah.
Those people just take different paths, I guess, to get where they need to go and sometimes where they're going. And I always could do that. And this might even be egoic, so maybe you can tell me the saying that caterpillars don't speak butterfly language.
Right.
Yeah. But I don't even know. And I'm thinking of it. It could actually be a little bit like, well, maybe we think we know more because we're taking this path. So I don't know.
It only means that if you think you're already a butterfly. But we're all caterpillars.
Right. But even just to, I think it's more the leap.
Yeah.
To then.
Yeah.
Like to know just the guidance that you're looking for, that like you found, but you just have to keep going on the journey. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's like
and
people that never found that.
Yeah.
And what is there? Like they could find something different, I guess, too. I don't know.
I guess there's a couple of different ways to look at that, and I think you make a really powerful point. Is there something wrong with saying that we found this? Mm-hmm. You know, that this has been part of our path in this life? And no, there's not. Because the reality is that it is. This is part of your life. This is part of your path in this life. This is what you were meant to discover in this life. And now you'll spend this life, and whatever part of it that you decide to, investing in further knowledge in this, in these practices, in these understandings. And they'll do the same thing in whatever they're doing. Whether they're going to church or temple or the bar, whatever they're investing in, they're going to do the same thing. The exact same thing, but just different tools. Now, what makes it different, and it's a valid difference, is that what you're learning is lending you toward nonviolence, lending you toward compassion. It's leading you into a particular way of life that is conducive to unity. And we don't know, can they say the same thing? We don't know, because where they are right now might not be where they were last year or where they'll be a year from now. So all we know is that we can measure the truth, the value, the health, the balance, the wellness of the path that we're on because of what it is lending and leading us to, which is nonviolence, unity, compassion. And we can look out with clarity at other individuals, and we can see with clarity that today, in this moment, with this decision that they are making, they are not. We can see that. And it doesn't have to be an egoic statement. somebody who burns an LGBTQ flag. You can say right now with clarity that the choice to do something like that does not lend itself to unity, does not lend itself to compassion, does not lend itself to nonviolence. You can say that. And you can simply recognize that that person is in process. And they're going to do the tango, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 3 steps forward, 5 steps back, 5 steps forward, 2 steps back. The same as you and I have done in this life. It's just manifesting in them and through them in different circumstances. An individual who works at the local convenience store, and every time this single mom comes into the store who is on social services and doesn't usually have enough to get everything she needs, he always hands her an extra half a gallon of milk. He says, just take it. And you've been there and you've seen this a few times, and you think in your heart, whatever that person is doing in their life, they're doing right. Why? Because it's lending them to nonviolence, to compassion, to unity. And it's obvious in that action. But what you don't know is that they go home, what they do when they're there. You don't know how they treat their own family. You don't know how they treat a stranger on the street outside of that particular circumstances. You don't know what their tango looks like. 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 5 steps back, 4 steps forward. You don't know. All you get to see is a glimpse, a momentary glimpse. Even my husband he couldn't stand it when I would say this, but we would sit here teaching and I would say, I'm married to this man. I love him with all my heart and soul, but I don't know him. You were probably there for a couple of those conversations, perhaps, Paul. But do I know him? And he would say, you know me, honey. And I would say, no, I know what I want to know of you. And I would like to think that in our relationship, we've grown enough that I can sit here and I can say honestly to you that I have not spent every second of every minute of every hour of every day of your entire existence with you. I only know some portion of you based on the time that I have spent with you, and not only based on that, based on the limited amount of time that I have spent with you in this life, based on my attitudes, my expectations, and my preferences in each second of each minute, of each hour, of each day that I have spent with you. Based on whether I was looking directly at you or somewhere else in that moment. Based on so many different things. How can I say, I know you, in the human context of that statement? In the spiritual context, of course. Of course, in the spiritual context, I knew exactly who he was, is, and will always be. But the spiritual context of knowing another being and the human component of it are two really different things. Just like niceties and ethics are way different from one another. So when we look at another person and we say, well, my path brings me peace. Does your path bring you peace? It's a fine conversation to have, but just understand that you don't know what their path is because you're only seeing them in a split second of time. You don't know where they were yesterday or where they will be tomorrow.
Do we always have peace?
What was that?
Do we always have peace?
No. And as a matter of fact, when you step on this path, sometimes that becomes really obvious. and the turmoil becomes, tumultuous. Totally. Yeah. And that's like being now you're in the ocean and you're riding the waves. Right? And you understand that they're your waves. The waves that belong to you, you'll ride.
I think you're more aware that when you are not in that peace, that you're more aware that something is shimming that water, it's not as peaceful as that.
Absolutely.
Remember it being a few minutes ago or whatever time.
Absolutely. And because you remember and because you recognize, what are you more likely to do? Self-adjust. Yes, absolutely. You're more likely to self-adjust because that's what these teachings teach you, is that your peace and your happiness are found within your self-adjustment, not the self-adjustment of others. Yeah. Is it helpful if they self-adjust? It lends itself to satisfaction, to temporary satisfaction. Oh, you changed for me. Yay, I was able to manipulate you into doing exactly what I wanted. Can I do it again? Can I get you to change for me? Yeah. There's a lot that can be said on that, but not today.
There's a thread of intuitive connection with everybody. It's just people need to categorize and create an us and them.
Yeah. And we don't need to.
And
It's
that
not
puts
necessary.
barrier.
Yeah. Yeah. So the nicest thing that you can say, and perhaps the kindest thing that you can say to anybody, is, may your path bring you peace. Whatever that path looks like, may it bring you peace. Period. You know? Just pray for peace. Pray for peace in other people's hearts and your own heart, and do your inner work. And have faith that the seeds that you're planting with your own inner work are going to be powerful enough to show you the peace that is within you. And only within you. Not within the world. Ain't no peace in the world. That's another conversation. All right, let's sit tall and close the eyes. Take a nice breath in and a nice breath out. Draw the hands together in front of the heart. And we'll lift our voices in one Om. Breathing in. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Om peace, peace, peace.